What adoption care for enterprise solutions you would recommend?
You should not try to boil the ocean at the start. Always start small, right?
When we talk about most of those organizations, are they global or Indian?
No, most of the organizations in India are also getting global now. So
we see Americans are way ahead of us in terms of technology.
America innovates, EU regulates, and India replicates.
Exactly.
But let me tell you, there is a very fine line between fear of missing out and risk of messing up. Most of the markets, they have come up with their own acts, right, or regulations, but by and large, the construct would not differ.
Since we are using a local data, we will be using the local policy. That's exactly how it works?
See, the answer is not that simple. It will depend where the data resides.
How do you see agentic AI in next 3 to 5 years?
It is nothing but productization of your services. How can you quickly scale your services, right? I mean, you would soon see AI systems of one organization talking to the other, right? When we talk about agentic AI.
What agentic AI in 2030 will be?
Ubiquitous.
The emerging tech you most bullish on besides AI?
Quantum computing, any day.
More challenging, managing tech or managing people?
Managing people in tech.
AI is definitely going to eat up jobs. What do you think?
Well, I would...
Welcome to the Collaborative Canvas, where we paint the future with conversations that matters. Today's episode is Masterclass in Leadership, Transformation, and the Rise of Autonomous Intelligence in the Enterprise World. My guest is Rachit Batham. He's a seasoned global executive with over 20 years of experience leading large-scale digital transformation, driving AI communication and commercialization, and steering M&A strategies in the tech and financial services space. From agentic AI to blockchain, from advisory roles to policy impact, he has been at the intersection of technology and impact. Today, we are going to explore what makes agentic AI truly game-changing, how human roles are evolving, and what it takes to build a responsible, scalable AI systems in today's enterprise landscape. If you're curious about where the future of the work, leadership, and intelligence automation is headed, this one is for you. So let's dive in right into this. Welcome, Rachit.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, again, we just mentioned what this whole episode is about. So, but we wanted to give a little glimpse from you about what is agentic AI and how is it transforming.
Definitely, I would give you a picture of what agentic AI means, right? But before I get there, I would also want to draw a contrast how it is different from your traditional and classic AI. That would help you understand why are we talking agentic AI here. Now, if you look at traditional or classic AI, it basically is an AI or a software system that works on predefined set of rules, right, underpinned by structured data. It works on human commands. Interestingly, if anything changes in that system, you need to reprogram or retrain the system. Most importantly, these systems are very deterministic. What does that mean? Which means that if you're providing the system with X set of inputs, it will always produce a Y set of output every time, all the time. Now come agentic AI. So before again getting to agentic AI, think about AI as a continuum, right? We spoke about the left side of the continuum where we spoke about traditional AI. Now go to the extreme right. That's where agentic AI is. And I'm not talking artificial general intelligence at the moment. So agentic AI, right? These systems, they can sense. These are context aware, right? They have memory so that they can think. Now the biggest advantage is these systems are autonomous. So they can act on their own. They have a big feedback loop, right? They understand it, right? And they look how they're performing, they reflect, and then they do course correction, which is how they adapt. So why I'm telling you these basic definitions, you could have gone to Google, you could have gone to any model-based like search engine, you would have got these. What does this mean? These things will radically transform the workflows, right? Now AI would no longer be an afterthought. You will reimagine your workflows, you will reimagine your processes to put these at the heart of it, right? That is how we are seeing, and at least in my view, we are looking at the other wave of enterprise transformation through agentic AI. And of course, I would also say, not agent washing, we need to go with a cautious approach.
Rajat, before I actually go to the next question, which is more about human and machine collaboration, but this is one question that I asked my earlier guest who also came for our agentic AI conversation, and he said, AI is definitely going to eat up jobs. What do you think?
Well, I would think of it differently. And I've heard this before. Glad that you mentioned that one of your guests mentioned this. And I've heard this from many industry leaders, my peers, right, when I speak with them, that as agentic AI or agency becomes more and more mainstream, the role of humans is going to get diminished. I would argue, right, I would differ on that. It's not an either or play, right? Rather, I'm seeing an evolution of a symbiotic relationship between humans and machines, where both will play on their strengths, right? Again, I always talk in continuums or spectrum. If you look at the work spectrum or continuum, agents will take on the heavy grunt work. They will look at automating the processes, right, where they can take up more, like the work which is more process driven, how can they automate it? Humans will move up on the value spectrum, which is more around decision making, defining the ethical boundaries, guardrails in which these agents would operate. And last, not the least, the relationship management. I'm more than sure where agents stand today, they cannot do relationship management for sure. So it's more like playing onto strengths and then coming together. And see, if you talk about this, I see organizations now, especially leaders, they have a bigger role cut out, especially the people who are in supervisory or managerial roles, right? We all are aware that there's a concept called HR business partner,
Yes.
right? I see the emergence of a concept called intelligence business partners or automation business partners. Now, what does that mean? These are essentially your business partners which are attached to one business unit, and they will wear many hats. They will identify the right processes which needs to be or where agentic AI needs to be put in, or AI agents need to be put in, or high level of agency. These will also identify the automation business partners. They will identify what blueprint is required, what is the right human agent mix that we are looking at, and more importantly, the piece of change management, which we often tend to ignore. That's the biggest piece. How will these agents and humans coexist in that business unit? So clearly, I see this role as a very important one, which will come to the surface.
And you just answered how human roles evolve as these AI agents are taking the autonomous part majorly. This is a very vital advice for people who are actually fearing and scaring from the fact that AI is going to eat their jobs up. But these are those people who actually do probably nothing, or they have been more stereotype work that they have been doing. How about change makers? How about policy makers? How about leaders who are actually implementing or running their own business? What is that advice that you would give it to them?
Interesting question, and this is something which is very close to my heart, and I keep thinking about it every time, like every morning at least when I get up, like where will I derive purpose from? So, see, I would give only two pieces of advice, right, if you may. The first thing is find your tribe, which means your mentors, your partners, and your A team. See, you would have heard this line, very cliched, technology is incidental, and I'm a firm believer. It's going to be people who are going to drive the technology, right? The biggest of the transformations that have happened or are happening, they're not just about tools or models, they're about set of people who share a vision and come together to deliver it. So it's about technology. I talked about mentors, right? I consider that point as very important, right? Get a mentor or group of mentors, people who have gone through the hoops, people who can help you spot the blind spots, rather, I would say. They help you identify the blind spots. See, I know we talk about teams and people, and interestingly, in the circuit of AI, there's already talk going on $1 billion company, right? And that is not far out in reality. So all the behemoths are talking about it. It'll happen when it will happen, right? And only time will tell how many will get there. But till then, identify your tribe. Find the right set of people. So that's one. Second, and that's very close to my heart, how much of societal good can you bring, right? Can you be the change maker to the society? If you can touch the lives of people in any way in a positive manner, right? That would really give you purpose. At least it gives purpose to me. I think one of the most fulfilling chapters of my career was working with the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. So wherein I was working closely with them in defining the governance framework to curb the menace of this spam calls and messages, right? In the right parlance, we call it unsolicited commercial communication. If you ask me, I was personally driven by it, right? Working on it. And again, based on new technology, emerging technology, which is distributed ledger technology or blockchain, as we know, right? As I said, I was quite driven, right? And that is something that's going to stick with me all my life. So all I would say with like my parting thought on that would be, don't chase technology. It will evolve any which case, right? Change something that gives you purpose, right? That's going to stick with you, and that is how you will sustain.
That's a beautiful summary, and I couldn't thank you enough for giving those spam alerts before even with whether we pick it up or not. We know that this is a spam, so never knew that this actually happened because you participated in this conversation and you actually brought that change to the word. So yes, completely agree. Another question with respect to my previous question. So what are those industries that can impact, and what advice you would give to any human being who are like afraid and scared of AI at the moment?
Okay. So interestingly, if you look at the industries, right, and there is enough and more material available, but see, what is agentic AI doing? It is looking at the industry which are heavy in processes, but there are lots of nuances where you need human judgment. So clearly, I look at financial services, and especially banking and insurance, like part of the financial services, heavily regulated, very process oriented. You have lots of workflows. This is where most of the action would happen, right? So that's where you see lots of agency coming in or AI agents coming in. Now, I always tell people, you should not try to boil the ocean at the start. Always start small, right? Figure out the right use cases, figure out the right processes that you need to agentize, right? So you need to put the right set of agency or AI agents into place. So that's the right way to start with. Of course, we can do a double click like how it works. But that is, in a nutshell, what I would tell people.
I think you actually pick up a very good example of the financial markets, in which will come later on. But current adoption stage and the challenges and the enablers, they're kind of restricting a lot when it comes to challenges specifically. So what adoption care for enterprise solutions you would recommend?
So adoption, if I understand, see, let's look at where the industry is, right? So every 4 out of 5 organizations, they are on their agentic AI transformation journey in some shape or the form. Most of the organizations, if not all, they are looking at bringing in more productivity. Now they are either toiling with the idea of doing the right POCs or pilots, or even maybe doing a minimum viable product or MVPs, as we call this in the industry, with a specific business function. But if you peel the layers off, not many, right? And I'm yet to see like any large organization where they have actually realized true benefits. Like, what is the value realization? What's the true transformation that they have been able to achieve? So if I have to do a typical consulting framework on a scale of 1 to 5, right? What is the maturity of the market, right? 1 being exploratory pilots, 5 being matured enterprise transformation. I would say most of the organizations are somewhere between 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
Yeah.
And when we talk about most of those organizations, are they global or Indian?
Oh, so all of the organizations, most of the organizations in India are also getting global now. So
no, considering the fact that when we speak about these things, when it comes to enterprise solutions or enterprise organizations, we see Americans are way ahead of us in terms of technology, and we are still gaining up that pace. So when we talk about this within the Indian context, we look at companies who are kind of maturing or at a growth, not even a growth short, they're actually inception stage.
Yeah.
So 2 and 3 is still highly likable a ranking given to the Indian organization versus don't you think? I would probably go with the global organization with 2 and 3, not Indian organization.
So yes, so I would say, and this has been said earlier as well. See, the way it works is America innovates, EU regulates, and India replicates.
Exactly.
Right. So that is how it works. Now, interestingly, if you look at India, or rather the Asian market, most of the unstructured data, that's been sitting in silos, and that sits in the Asian countries. 40% of the global unstructured data sits in here.
Yes.
So it's kind of a leapfrogging moment for India, right? How can they capitalize on this data and actually build an enterprise of the future? Now, depending on the size of the organization, whether you are global, depends, right? So that is how you are resorting to a different AI strategy. Many organizations, global organizations, they are even building their own models. Smaller organizations, they are borrowing the models or they're fine-tuning it for their purpose. Or even much smaller organizations, they are just like doing a plug and play. So it depends what part of the spectrum you are on.
That's a very great summary. I was just thinking about that because when we categorize the industries those ways, we actually see, how the penetration on a certain company, which is like smaller in their nature, they're actually adapting to it. And I totally agree with the fact that I have seen that how, tier one companies, they innovate, how tier two companies, they actually use it, and then tier three, they see how it works. But considering we've been reading about agentic AI by large, we're reading about privacy by large, there's a specific control that mechanized into the system. There are certain compliances that you need to follow. There's certain decision quality that you actually, come up with. Does it matter for any specific tier company who's adopting to it, or does it not?
Oh, it matters to all. Let me give you a little longish answer, but that would demystify things. I would start with the concept of FinOps, right? So FinOps is nothing but a concept or an operating model which has been there in the market, especially when we talk about cloud transformation. So this framework talks about cloud cost management. Now, why this framework? This is a very interesting framework. This is an integrated model where you have shared responsibility between IT, business, and finance. Now, what it does, it actually allows for a centralized governance and policy enforcement, at the same time letting the businesses manage their cloud usage in a decentralized manner. So it's a centralized control of a decentralized cloud usage, right? Interesting framework. On similar lines, I see a framework evolving for AI governance across the board for organizations.
Can we just simplify this in an example form? Because I really wanted to understand the first part before I understand the second part.
Yeah, so let's say an organization, right? So everybody, let me put a safeguard here. Most of the organizations, if not all, they are on their cloud transformation journey. And now they use, lots of hyperscalers. And everybody knows, you always over provision cloud resources, right? You need to control cloud costs. It is more like your credit card behind the tap, right? So you need to take control of your cloud costs, right? So this is a framework which lets you control your cloud costs, and people have seen benefits up to 25 to 30% when done right, if they have implemented this framework, the FinOps model, right? And it has been there in the market. In fact, there is a FinOps foundation, right, if you go and read about it. So many large organizations, they have adopted this model, right? I would not get into the tenets of the model, what it typically entails, but it's a framework. The idea is to take a leaf out of the booklet, right? It's an integrated, a shared responsibility framework between IT, business, and finance, right? How you can manage things centrally, yet allowing for a decentralized usage, right? So that is what I was trying to allude to.
But these three combines all the centralization when you're working on a decentralization model. Working with the decentralization model.
Yeah, so let's say in an organization, you will have your IT, your finance, and the business, right? So they will help define the policies, right? What does that mean? That the rates for a certain XYZ cloud service provider, they will fix it centrally, right? What tier they are buying, right? And in terms of cloud, I would say purchase. Whereas businesses, they would have the comfort of using the cloud as per their requirements, right? So how much they want to use, right? And that is being governed centrally. It all rolls up to a central function, right? So that is how it is getting managed. That's a FinOps function. I would not want to more complicate it.
Makes sense. So agentic AI plays a vital role in this because it's been defined based on the usage and the governance or the compliances.
So now keeping that cloud thing separate, keep it at bay. I was just taking an example. Now for agentic AI, right? I would see an evolution of a similar governance structure. We spoke about governance, right? Where it's a shared responsibility model between IT, business, and your risk function. Some organizations call it ERC, some call it GRC, but the risk function. Now, what it would do is the centralized function would take care of implementing or executing the AI strategy, setting the controls posture, right? Defining the ethical boundaries. Whereas the decentralized teams, which would essentially be a business function or support functions, they will identify the right use cases, that what needs agency, what needs to be agentized, and they will put this forward for development, right?
And this happens on a regular basis, I'm assuming, because every now and then you get to have another dynamic situation that you're standing on.
Yeah. So, okay, let me do a double click for you so that I clarify myself what I'm trying to say. Let's talk about the centralized part, right? Now, what will happen? This central unit will be the custodian. They will have an inventory of everything which is AI in your organization, all the solutions, all the algorithms, all the models, right, that you're deploying. So they will have that centralized repository. They would be the control board to review all the requests coming from businesses that what needs to be agentized or where we need to put AI. They will review the request with the lens. Accordingly, they will ask for more details. They will approve it or reject it. Thirdly, they will also monitor the performance of everything that is AI in the organization, wherein, of course, you will have predefined metrics, right? The key metrics in terms of their performance, whether it is doing the right explainability, whether the model is hallucinating, etc., etc. So this would be the centralized body. The decentralized business teams, they have a bigger job cut out. They need to identify the right processes. Do they have the process intelligence, right? They need to put forth, right, the right processes for development that will go into the queue to centralized teams, right? So that is how you will manage. So again, it's a shared responsibility, but that is how you would be able to control how AI is getting leveraged in your organization. See, I call this, everybody is jumping on this bandwagon, right? We want to do agentic AI. But let me tell you, there is a very fine line between fear of missing out and risk of messing up. That's the way I look at it.
And which is why my next question, to better understand the decentralization part, is that the element of using human insights still remains in the decentralization part.
Oh, human are not going to go away. Let me contextualize this with a few examples, right? Now, AI strategy and controls posture of one organization would starkly differ from the other. I have known organizations, right, which are leveraging customer data, of course, with customer consent. And when they leverage this customer data into their models, they are clear. Their control posture and their strategy says that the model and the output will belong to the customer, right?
Yes.
Whereas I've also known organizations which are using customer data, again with customer consent, to actually fine-tune their models, even create synthetic data.
Correct.
So you can see the stark difference. Both organizations are right in their own right, but depends on their strategy. Let me give you another dimension to this. We talk about compliance, right? There is a EU or European Union AI Act.
Yeah.
Now, in this act, you have different categories of AI risk, right? And your use case will fall under one of those categories. Now, let's say if you're using AI for performance evaluation for your employees, and by the definition of this EU AI Act, your use case is more likely than not will fall under a high risk category. Then accordingly, you will have to produce a very detailed fact sheet for the regulator. Whereas if you're using AI for your back office operations, let's say for accounts, for your invoice payments, right, just to identify anomalies, this will get classified as a low risk use case, and then you will have to produce a different fact sheet for the regulator, right? How about the centralized team regulating this? Because the business would not know what am I supposed to produce, right? That's where you need centralized governance to guide the teams.
And that's being categorized with high risk to low risk categories.
So again, yeah, so we have tiering, right? So I'm talking about the EU AI Act. Most of the markets, they have come up with their own acts, right, or regulations, but by and large, the construct would not differ, right?
But you mentioned that, US innovate
Yes.
and EU regulates. Does that regulation actually implies in India as well?
No, so India will come up with their own regulation. We have our DPDP, like the Data Protection Act. So I'll not get into the regulatory part of it.
But the fact is that, the low risk factor or high risk factor, the way we are categorizing how to use it, still remains the same, though few things here and there may change.
Of course. So yeah, of course. See, the skeleton broadly would not differ. It's only the way the lens you pick up how to look at it. But it always will protect the interest of the consumers, right? That is how regulations are being
when it
built.
comes to compliances, we work internationally. Sometimes we using an international Indian data and using it for an EU process. The compliance, as in again, the skeleton remains the same. Does it mean that since we are using a local data, we'll be using the local policy? That's exactly how it works.
See, the answer is not that simple. It will depend where the data resides, right?
Okay.
So data residency requirements, many requirements, right? So I'm not opening a can of worms here. So it's not a very straightforward answer.
But that needs a lot of, I think, canvassing to understand where it works.
Absolutely. And I'll go back to the point that I mentioned, and that is where your centralized team would guide you, right?
Yes.
Because you have identified a use case from a business lens, right? From a business perspective, but you would need guidance. And that's when you will go to the centralized team that would help you guide this, right? So that you do not run into any risk. And the biggest one that you'll carry on your book is reputational risk.
And when you say centralized team, do we have any other roles within the ecosystem? We spoke about different tiers. We spoke about different companies. We spoke about single skeleton way. We spoke about different compliances. The role of acquisition in partnership, does it also matters here?
Oh, that's a tricky question you have asked me. See, let me widen the aperture here, right? When we talk about emerging technologies, right? So this could become a really tricky question. I am seeing, and we all are seeing, quite an uptick when it comes to acquisitions and partnerships in the space of AI, right? Okay, let me give you a perspective here, right? Let's look at the product companies and the services companies, right? Now, the product companies, the product market, like if I look at the stats, I'm a person who believes in stats, right? Then that is how we drive the market. The market valuation is somewhere about $1 trillion, right? Whereas when you look at a typical business process management market, right? That market is somewhere in the range of 4.5 to 5 trillions, right? Now, again, coming back to the work continuum, right? See, if you look at the work continuum, roughly 30 to 40% is already automated, right? By the technology of the time with rule-based automation, RPA. So now let's knock off 30 to 40%. Now, out of that remaining, let's say 60 to 70%, 30% would still need human judgment, right? So the way AI or agentic AI stands today, we would need that human judgment. That leaves us with what? Another 30 to 40%. That's the golden space everybody's vying, right? That is where, like, which was limited by the technology of the time, which is getting unlocked by agentic AI. That is what everybody is looking at, right? So now, interestingly, the product companies, they are building an AI layer into their products, but they need process intelligence, right? And that is where they are partnering with consulting organizations, service organizations, right? BPM organizations for a joint go-to-market. Whereas if you look at the services organization or a BPM organization, they clearly understand that this is a big share of the market. But if they keep building solutions which are boutique, very custom, they would never be able to scale. That's where the concept of service as a software is coming to the surface, right? It is nothing but productization of your services. How can you quickly scale your services, right? Replicable services, whereas offering some degree of modularity and flexibility to the customers, right? So you're seeing this is something like interesting. People are meeting in the middle, like product companies are trying to build the services layer, services companies are trying to productize it, right? Now these services companies are leaning towards an ecosystem-based model, like when they look at their technology stack. So on the infrastructure layer, they're partnering with lots of hyperscalers, cloud service providers. On the intelligence layer, they're partnering with lots of AI players, right, to offer the choice of different AI models. So interesting. The third bit that we all are seeing in the market is the rise of open ecosystems, like in the space of AI. Most of the AI behemoths, if not all, they have come up with this open AI ecosystems, right, which is nothing but democratizing AI technology. So what they are doing, they are provided access to engineers, organizations, researchers to this AI technology. And see, the benefit is manifold. What happens is this helps in faster development of AI technology, helps them improve the performance of their AI, also helps them in building the interoperability frameworks, right? Because AI is not an experiment. I mean, you would soon see AI systems of one organization talking to the other, right? When we talk about agentic AI, and also helps in garnering regulatory attention, right? So it helps in many ways. So these are the activities which I'm seeing from in the market, and I'm sure, like many leaders, right, in the market, they all are observing this space very closely.
I'm sure. I mean, because a lot of people are still talking about agentic AI, and I still believe, even within my podcast, the guests that I've spoken about, it is still in a very early stage. A lot of evaluation still needs to happen. How do you see agentic AI in next 3 to 5 years?
Oh, agentic AI in next 3 to 5 years. See, it is only going to get mainstream, right? So increasingly, like, see, you're starting with your basic processes, right? And I always call it, when you are looking at unknown waters, like, or rather, let me put it another way, right? Get into the pool from the shallow side if you don't know the pool, right? So what you should do is, or what people are usually doing is, they are looking at the middle of it and the back office processes. Of course, clearly what they are trying to derive out of that is increased productivity. But at the same time, it allows you to buy in time, right? To create trust in technology within the organization as you graduate towards more critical business processes, like which are more customer facing, more front office based, right? So that is where the organizations are. So this is only going to go up on the value spectrum. And of course, the developments in this technology are happening at such a rapid pace that I don't have a crystal ball to predict what's going to happen in the next 5 years. But again, I can only say that the penetration is only going to go up north.
Yeah, I mean, looks like it's really even. I agree that hard to predict what will be agentic AI in next 5 years. But the impact is it's global. And again, I'll probably take you back to the same question: who's going to get impacted the most? First of all, in next say 6 months or 8 months, we talked about financial markets. Who else?
So we talked about a sector, right? From that lens, if I said about the financial services market, but having said that, putting a disclaimer here, it's not confined to just financial services. Other sectors are following the suit. If I look at the processes, like what's going to get disrupted or transformed, it's going to be the finance function, right? The supply chain operations, your HR operations, right? Claims management in insurance, right? Now, why I'm saying all of these things?
And sounds like all the services factor.
Yes, I'm talking about the services side of the things, right?
But you did mention about how products are getting into service mode and the SaaS models are coming.
So I'll come to that part, right? I'll just finish this thought here, right? So I talked about different processes, but if you try to understand the commonality between them, right? These are very like process-driven, I would say workflow-driven like processes, like finance function, like very like that these things need to happen in a certain manner, and in many parts of these processes, human judgment is required, right?
Yes.
And that is a classic recipe or classic case for agentic AI, right? So that is why people are looking at these processes. Now, you talked about the product companies, right? See, interestingly, I mean, we all understand the penetration of enterprise-grade software in the organization, right? A mid-sized software company, like on an average, has more than 100 enterprise applications, right, in there. Now, what these applications, they are not self-sufficient. They are enabling people, right? They just work on the CRUD framework, right? I'm not trying to get technical here, but like create, read, update, and delete.
Okay.
How about I build a layer on top of it, which is more like let's say sales software. Like, can it produce a dashboard on demand, right? Yes, it can if I build the right level of agency in it. So again, I talked about that 30%, that golden share, right? They are buying that share. How can I actually displace humans from that, and my software is self-sufficient if I build in that layer? So that is why they're putting that integrated layer of service on top of it. And if you look at it, it also makes sense for these organizations. If you have an integrated layer, that takes away the worry, the risk, right? The worry of how much of risk I'm carrying on my books for an organization, because it's an integrated layer, right, that the product is offering. So you have a better chance of selling that to an organization because it's an integrated layer, right?
But does it mean that you're minimizing the human resource to it, because now you have somebody's taking care of building a dashboard, for example?
I always try to challenge this thought, like minimizing the humans. Why can't we look at it? We are repurposing humans, right? Can't they move up on the value spectrum? So, okay, how about getting more with the same set of human resources, right? Or getting the same outcome with fewer, right? It's a win-win either way, right? How do you move up on the value spectrum, right? You can squeeze out more. Why not, right?
I think that's something, a very vital thought for people to understand, because even a lot of people don't, upskill themselves. They still believe, and I would completely buy your point on the financial markets, because, if you give them anything which is ready-made, they'll probably use it. As in, business would definitely use it. And somebody who's doing it will have to go. I mean, they'll probably lose their job. What do they need to come up as an expert? What would you advise them?
Oh, so, okay. I see where your question is now. See, it's a performer perish game, okay? Yes. I mean, I would not want to sugarcoat it, right? Everyone will have to reskill themselves, right? I'll go back to where we started from. AI now is not an afterthought. Like, let me try to give you an example, right? The conversational bots, which the banking sector came up with, it's not new, right? They came into existence about 10 years ago. Many banks came up with those bots with AI of yesterday.
Yes.
Now, but they had limited functionality, right? How many times you had a successful conversation with a bot?
I'm not even today.
I would not even look for an answer. And trust me, the satisfaction score never breached the 60% mark, right? So that is because it was more like an afterthought, like put in place, right? But now you're radically transforming the workflows, right? You're putting it at the heart of it, AI integrated, and I'm not even getting into the technical nuances, right? Now, to do that, you need to upskill yourself. The entire workflow has changed. So, see, okay, let's look at the organization, like a services organization. Let's do this example. It's the 100% workforce. About 10% is your leadership, right? Which is essentially responsible for navigating, right? The direction. So they are not as much as the users of AI. Now, the remaining 90% of the organization, I would just classify them into two. One part is which is creating or deploying AI, right? Those would be, again, less than 10 to 15% if you're a services company and very pro AI. The majority of the organization would be the organization which is leveraging AI. So if they are not skilled, they are not equipped, they would never be able to derive maximum benefits out of this, right? And the leadership knows this. If these people are not upskilling themselves, they'll be shunted out. They'll be replaced by people who can actually use AI.
They will be replaced by the people who can actually do that.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thought. So the point is, if you still don't have the answers, you still have to work on, upscaling yourself. But I'm not sure a lot of people know actually what ChatGPT is. But now the next few questions I'm going to ask Rachit GPT to answer me in one word. Rachit, the first is, what agentic AI in 2030 will be?
Ubiquitous.
The emerging tech you most bullish on besides AI?
Quantum computing any day.
Oh, wonderful. More challenging, managing tech or managing people?
Managing people in tech.
A book or a podcast that recently inspired you?
I would rather talk about the book called Factfulness by Hans Rosling. There's so much happening around the globe, right? And which scares people. This gives a different spin, it brings in optimism with some backed up by data. So definitely one should read this book.
And if you could automate one personal daily task, what would that be?
Oh, hands down, my family WhatsApp group. If AI can take care of it, that would be wonderful.
So that's more than the limited time a ChatGPT would answer. That's Rachit GPT that we just got to know. And if you actually had this conversation loved the most, please definitely reach out to us for more such inspiring conversations that we have on Agentic AI. Thank you so much, Rachit. As much as I know about Agentic AI, I probably be very immature to understand where it is heading to and what is right now sitting on the bench for people who are not incredibly known to the AI word so far. Other than the fact that we are only moving to the chat GPTs of the world, asking questions that we used to do 10 years ago with Google search. So thank you so much for stepping in, and in helping the audience understand how Agentic AI is becoming a solution and what they actually need to do. I think the biggest fear that people still are looking at it, that the job's going to lost. But every now and then, whatever we hear from the guest here, that jobs will still remain there. The human insight is not getting lost. What is getting lost is when you're not upskilling yourselves. So again, as I said, that's an incredible deep dive with Rachit. And I hope it lets you and gives more clarity and curiosity about what is the future of agentic AI in the enterprise landscape will be. What stood out to me was an autonomous agent won't replace human, and that's exactly what I've been reciting every now and then whenever I speak with you guys, but will redefine us. And for the future demands, new leadership, new governance, and the models and the new ways to create value is still ahead of us. So if you're building in the AI space, leading the digital transformation, or simply want to stay ahead of the curve, take this as your cue to upskill, rethink all the workflows, and the most importantly, find your tribe, just as Rachit emphasized. Liked what you just heard, so don't forget to follow in the Collaborative Canvas on Spotify and subscribe to the YouTube channel, because we get more trailblazing guests and transformative insights coming your way. Comment below if you have any thoughts or question, and let us know what you kind of exploring the world of AI and enterprise tech, and I would bet I'll get you the guest who would speak more about it. And if you're an industry expert, innovator, or founder with a story to tell, reach out. Maybe you should be the next guest. Until then, keep learning and keep evolving. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rachit.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.